I've never even been around homeless people. Maybe seen them on the street sometimes, but I've never been around homeless people at all. Never knew anything about it. That's why I had my own problems believing what I was doing, but I just kept saying to myself, they're better off without me.
She was a devoted wife, a loving mother, the kind of neighbor who brought over cookies and stayed to help with homework. But in a single moment, Brenda Heist stepped off the face of the earth. No warning, no struggle, no note. Her car sat abandoned in a park in Pennsylvania. Her kids waited at school pickup. Her husband filed a missing persons report, and the town whispered one word over and over again: suicide. But here's the twist no one saw coming. Brenda wasn't dead, not even close. 11 years later, she walked into a sheriff's office in Florida, sunburned and crying, and told them something that sounded like fiction. "I'm Brenda Heist, and I've been gone a long time." But why did she vanish? What could possibly drive a suburban mom to abandon her entire life and stay gone for over a decade? The truth, as it turns out, is messier than a mystery novel. Let's rewind. It was February 2002, Lititz, Pennsylvania. A small, safe town with porch swings and backyard grills. Brenda was in the middle of a nasty divorce, facing financial ruin. She just dropped her 2 kids off at school and returned home to do some laundry. Just another ordinary day, but something snapped. The pressures, the legal battles, the emotional collapse. And then, at a local park where she went to cry, she met strangers. Total strangers. A group of hitchhikers. And just like that, Brenda got in their van. She didn't call anyone. She didn't leave a note. She just left. For years, her husband, Lee Heist, lived under a dark cloud of suspicion. Police dug through his past. His children, Morgan and Lee Jr., were forced to grow up with a missing mother and a father under a microscope, their lives fractured. Meanwhile, Brenda. She was drifting through Florida, sleeping under bridges, living with strangers, taking odd jobs, even getting arrested under fake names. But no one ever connected her to the missing woman from Pennsylvania. Until 2013. After over a decade on the run, Brenda broke. She turned herself in to authorities in Key Largo, Florida, and finally confessed to who she really was. But here's where things get darker, because not everyone was ready to forgive her. Her now grown children didn't rush to her side. Her husband, now remarried, said plainly, "She is not part of our lives anymore." So was Brenda's disappearance a breakdown, a selfish escape, or something deeper, something more desperate? We'll let you decide, but what's certain is this. Brenda Heist became one of America's strangest missing person cases, not because she vanished, but because of how she came back. The news of Brenda Heist's return didn't bring the relief you might expect. Instead, it ignited a wildfire of confusion, anger, and disbelief. Her ex-husband, Lee Heist, had spent years under suspicion, interrogated, scrutinized, judged. Imagine the weight he carried, raising 2 children alone, while the world wondered if he'd murdered their mother. He had been forced to rebuild his life from the ashes of scandal. And now, Brenda, alive and very much real, was back. But to him, she was a stranger. Brenda's daughter Morgan was just 8 when her mother disappeared. By the time Brenda resurfaced, Morgan was 19, already hardened by years of abandonment and public scrutiny. When asked about her mother's return, Morgan didn't smile. She said, "She left. She didn't look back. We had to survive without her." And that's what makes this story so haunting. It isn't just about a woman who vanished, it's about the emotional wreckage she left behind. Brenda told police that during those 11 years, she'd never contacted her family. Not once. Not a letter. Not a phone call. She claimed she was too ashamed, too afraid. But to the people she left behind, that explanation wasn't enough. So where exactly had she been? According to Brenda, after hopping into the van with the hitchhikers, she journeyed down to Florida. She worked cleaning houses. She lived homeless for stretches of time, sleeping in parks and under bridges. She moved from town to town, working under aliases, occasionally getting in trouble with the law, but never for long. One of her longest stays was with a man she lived with for several years in the Keys. He reportedly took her in when she was homeless. He never knew her real name. Then, in 2013, things took a turn. Brenda had reached rock bottom. She had been living on the streets again, tired, sick, mentally and emotionally depleted. That's when she walked into the Monroe County Sheriff's Office and said, "I'm on the missing persons list. I need help." Officers were stunned. They ran her fingerprints. They contacted Pennsylvania. And the truth unraveled like a long-forgotten thread. When the media caught wind, the story exploded. National headlines, daytime talk shows. A once missing mum who simply walked back into the world. But the happy reunion never happened. Brenda didn't go home. Her family didn't fly to Florida. There were no tearful embraces at the airport. Instead, she was taken for medical evaluation, then quietly faded from public view. So where is she now? Brenda Heist lives in obscurity, under a new identity, far from the spotlight. No interviews, no memoir, no explanation that could undo the damage of a decade-long silence. And yet, her story still lingers. A woman overwhelmed by life vanishes. Her absence shatters a family. Her return only deepens the wounds. Brenda's case forces us to ask uncomfortable questions. What makes someone walk away from everything they love? And when they come back, is it ever really the same? Brenda Heist's return didn't just reopen old wounds. It lit a fire beneath decades of emotional debris, ashes that had quietly settled over her family, her community, and herself. Lee Heist had remarried, trying to create some version of normal for his kids. But when reporters cornered him, in the days after Brenda resurfaced, he didn't smile or lash out. He just said, "I've buried her once. I'm not doing it again." For him, the mystery had ended. But the pain, that was eternal. Her children, Morgan and Lee Jr., never fully processed the loss, because there had never been a body, never a reason, just a hole in the universe where their mother used to be. Brenda's daughter in particular grew up with trauma most can't imagine. School classmates whispered, neighbors stared, police questioned. By the time she was old enough to understand abandonment, she had already been labeled the girl whose mom ran away. And now, with Brenda alive, it wasn't just grief she had to face, it was betrayal. She once said in a rare statement to press, "She chose the streets over her kids. That's something I'll carry forever." But let's zoom out from the heartbreak and look at why Brenda ran. Mental health professionals, after reviewing the case, concluded she may have suffered a complete psychological collapse. Years of financial stress, emotional isolation, possible untreated depression. In 2002, Brenda had just been denied housing assistance. She was going through a divorce. She was broke, tired, emotionally hollow. So when two strangers offered escape, even just for a moment, she took it. What followed was 11 years of drifting, working under the table, sleeping in tents and on church steps, living not as Brenda Heist, but as Jane Doe, Brenda B., Stephanie, and others. She'd occasionally find kindness, people who gave her a bed, a sandwich, a job. But none of them knew who she really was. She lived like a ghost. The Florida man she lived with for several years had no idea she had a family, or that she was listed on a national database of missing persons. She hid in plain sight, using fake names and cleaning homes for cash. She even had brushes with the law, minor infractions, but none severe enough to warrant fingerprinting. That's how she slipped through the cracks for more than a decade. And when she reappeared, Brenda expected judgment. She got it, but she also got help. Police didn't charge her. She wasn't a criminal. She was a missing person, found. But the real sentence was emotional exile. No family rushed to her side. No welcome home signs. No second chances. Brenda Heist had escaped her life. But in doing so, she lost it all. The strange thing about being found is that you don't just walk back into your old life. You walk into a graveyard of memories, of people, of the version of you that no longer exists. Brenda Heist wasn't stepping into a reunion. She was stepping into a reckoning. Authorities ran her fingerprints and officially closed the missing person case. Located, alive. Two words that should bring joy. But in reality, it brought silence. No one wanted her back. Her children refused contact. Her ex-husband, remarried and resolved, wanted no part of the circus. Even the police had little else to say once the paperwork was done. And so, Brenda found herself alone. Not in a tent, not on the run, but in a small Florida mental health facility where she checked herself in after spiraling again. This time, not from disappearance, but from resurfacing. The spotlight was brutal. Reporters camped outside the center. Online forums buzzed with judgment. People called her selfish, heartless, mentally unstable. But what few understood is that sometimes being found isn't a happy ending. It's the beginning of another nightmare. She said in a rare interview, "I was ashamed. I thought they were better off without me. But then I saw myself on TV, and I didn't even recognize who I was anymore." Imagine that. Seeing your own face on national news, labeled a ghost returned, and realizing you don't know that person at all. Brenda didn't just disappear from Pennsylvania. She disappeared from herself. Even years later, no one really knows where she is now. No confirmed reports, no published interviews, no books, just silence. It's like she vanished twice, once into the world, and again into anonymity. But here's the thing. Her case still haunts true crime circles, because it asks the question most are afraid to say out loud. What if you're found, and no one wants you back? Brenda Heist walked out of a park in 2002 and vanished. 11 years later, she reappeared. But the world had already moved on. You'd think that would be the moment of celebration. The lost mother returns. The headlines scream, the family hugs, the credits roll. But there were no credits, because this wasn't a movie. It was life. And in life, people don't always come back the same. Brenda tried to rebuild. She wanted to reconnect with her daughter and son, now both adults. But they wanted answers. Answers Brenda either couldn't give or couldn't face. What could she say? That she broke under the weight of single motherhood. That two strangers on a bench made her feel like vanishing was easier than fighting. There was no grand plan, no scheme, no foul play, just a woman who cracked. And once she slipped through the cracks, she kept falling. Brenda never faced criminal charges. Legally, she did nothing wrong. But emotionally, she carried the burden of abandonment, regret, and silence. Her reappearance didn't bring justice. It brought questions that had no clean answers. And so, over time, her name faded from the news cycle. No book deal, No movie, no memoir. Just a shadow. Proof that some people don't disappear because they were taken. They disappear because they were drowning. But here's the haunting truth. Brenda Heist could be your neighbor now. Your cashier. The woman sitting quietly on a park bench, looking at nothing in particular. She could be anyone, anywhere. That's what makes her story unforgettable. She didn't vanish into the hands of a monster. She vanished into the cracks of an ordinary life. And if this story hit you hard, if it made you question how fragile the line is between staying and slipping away, then you're not alone. Brenda's story isn't just about her. It's about all the lives that go missing quietly, without a trace, without foul play, without a word. And the pain that lingers long after they're found. If you want more haunting, real-life true crime stories like this, stories that dig deep into the human soul and don't let go, make sure to subscribe, like, and share. We tell the stories others forget, because no one should be forgotten.